Bienvenidos a Taboo Talk Latina Edition. Yo soy Cynthia.
And I'm Jeanette.
And this is where we create a safe space for Latinas to be real, raw, and share their authentic stories.
Aquí hablamos de todo lo que nuestra cultura muchas veces no quiere hablar, desde identidad, amor propio y éxito, hasta los tabús que nos han afectado por generaciones.
We're here to break the silence, challenge outdated expectation, and uplift each other through honest storytelling, because when Latinas come together, we empower each other to grow, heal, and redefine what's possible.
And today we're having a real, raw, and much-needed conversation, one that so many mujeres will relate to.
Because let's be honest, en nuestra cultura se espera que las mamás lo hagan todo y sin quejarse. Pero ¿qué pasa con el postpartum? What about the emotional and physical recovery that no one talks about?
And beyond that, we're also talking about how Latinas are redefining what success looks like. Porque for a long time, we were told that stability meant una carrera tradicional. But now we're breaking those expectations y creando nuestro propio camino.
And to dive into this conversation, we have an amazing guest with us today.
Nuestra invitada de hoy es una mujer increíble, mamá, educadora y creadora de contenido Spanglish, directamente desde Miami. She's on a mission to help children with special needs reach their full potential and to connect with the Latina community, moms, and teachers through social media. Not only has she written 5 educational books to help kids learn Spanish and build math fluency, pero ahora está trabajando en un canal de YouTube para que los niños aprendan el español de una forma divertida.
Y cuando no está ayudando a los niños y la familia, está disfrutando el tiempo con su esposo y sus 3 hijos, haciendo lo que sea para estar afuera y activa en el aire libre. Let's give a warm welcome to Betty Williams. Bienvenida.
Hola. Hi.
So happy to have you here.
Thank you. That was quite the introduction. Thank you.
Well deserved.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Thank
So
you.
let's get into it, right? So postpartum en la cultura latina, hay muy poco de esto. Y muchas veces cuando una mujer acaba de dar a luz, se espera que siga su vida como si nada pasó, ¿verdad?
Y muchas veces, right, Betty, escuchamos que las mujeres de antes no se quejaban, o tienes que ser fuerte por tu bebé, como si nuestro bienestar no importara. Pero la realidad es que postpartum es duro y no se habla suficiente, because I know that's something that you preach about, and I'm so happy to see.
Yes. So, Betty, tú como mamá, ¿cómo fue tu experiencia con el postpartum? ¿Sentiste apoyo o tuviste que navegarlo solo?
Okay. So, yo tengo 3 hijos, como dijiste en la introducción, y las 3 experiencias fueron completamente diferentes. So, with my first, I did not have a good relationship with her dad, but luckily I had my mom there. But that missing piece of like the romantic partner not having it was really, really hard. And then with my other 2 kids that now I'm like married to the love of my life, the postpartum with my second daughter, so the first one I had with him, there was a lot of guilt that I was in such a good place compared to where I was with the first one. And I think it's just the hormones trying to latch onto something to cry about, because I would just cry and be like, it's so unfair that I didn't get to have this with my first 8 years ago. And instead of enjoying the time that I had, I was still like so worried. And this is a really good question, especially for somebody like me, because supposedly there's women who don't experience postpartum anxiety and depression, which is awesome. They say how there's like baby blues, but I definitely experienced it hard. And something I want, like, if anybody takes anything away from this today, is that postpartum isn't the day you get home from the hospital. It can happen 10 months later. It can happen 3 months later. And I don't want somebody who's about to have a baby to be like waiting for it. You know, if you're like, enjoy the moment, be present, be mindful. But if 6-7 months down the road, you start to like feel a certain type of way, like, understand that is postpartum as well. And then with my third, I decided right when I found out that I was pregnant with my third, I decided that this experience was going to be different, because something that we waited 3 years before the second and the third, only because of my mental health. Me and my husband were ready to have a third like right away, but I kept stalling because I was like, I cannot go through that emotional roller coaster again. And that's that I have a very supportive husband, a very supportive mom, My suegra has little kinks, but she's also very supportive.
Normal.
Supportive family, but I still went through it. So from the day that I found, like, one of the first things I did before calling my OBGYN was make an appointment with a psychiatrist. And I was like, what do I need to do? And I remember her telling me, she said something along the lines, and at this point, I'm telling you, I had just found out I was pregnant. So I was like 4 weeks pregnant. And I remember her telling me something like, with the right supports, a lot of women don't realize that postpartum can be a good experience. You just really need to really be prepared. And my son's only 4 months old. And up to now, I haven't experienced what I did with my first two. But again, like, I know that it can come later as well. So I made the appointment with the psychiatrist, and I'm very open about this part of my mental health. But I did with my second, when she was about a year and something, I did decide to go on medication for my anxiety and depression because it's really heavy on me. And I tried everything under the sun, the meditations, the affirmations, the journaling, the gym, run, everything that anybody would suggest outside of medication, I tried. And I still needed that one little extra ounce of support. So I called the doctor and I was like, I'm pregnant again. I'm very happy, but I need to know that postpartum, like, I need to have the right supports in place because I cannot go through what I went through. I can't do it. And so we adjusted my medication for something that's safe in pregnancy. And I met with my therapist weekly, or like bi-weekly, just to make sure that, like, I had all my ducks in a row. And again, if somebody's listening to this and you're in the same boat, just know that if it does happen, if you do experience some sort of postpartum anxiety or depression, as much as it hurts and as much as it's uncomfortable, you're not alone. Just make sure you have, like, your plan B in place for, like, when I start to feel that way, who can I talk to? Where can I go? What's the doctor's number? What's the therapist's number? And in Florida, there's a company. This is where I did my therapy through. There's a company called Better Beginnings, which is therapy just for women. And they specialize, like, their therapists specialize in pregnancy and postpartum.
Wow.
So highly recommend that company. So yeah, that was my journey. I'm not sure if I completely answered your question.
Yeah, you did. And I love that you touched the fact on things that we don't speak about, because listening to your story took me back to when I became a mom. For my first pregnancy, I felt fine. I felt like postpartum didn't hit me as I thought it would, right? Like you said, it hits everyone different. But with my second, I felt that even when I was pregnant, I felt that I had some sort of like a depression, anxiety. I kept crying and I said, but why? You know, like, I have this baby I love. I have his brother. Like, I still feel disconnected from myself. And even after, it didn't hit me the postpartum a year later. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because sometimes we feel there's something wrong with us, or we're being ungrateful, or we're not good enough. We're not good parents. We're not going to be a good mom. And it can hit you at any time. You know, I just feel that because I had mine back to back, I was such in a rush that until I really like settle, it didn't hit me.
Yeah. Yeah, that can happen. It happens in different ways for everybody. One thing, I don't know if I mentioned this, one thing that I would tell myself with my third, because now I already experienced it 2 times. I know how uncomfortable it is. With my third, when I would have the baby blues, like the first 2 weeks, that I would just, like, you know how you just cry like, I would look at my baby and cry because I'm like, you're so cute.
Yeah, I know.
Like, cry, but it's like that depression. Like, you're just so sad and you don't know why. So I would tell myself my hormones are coming out through my eyes, because that's a big part of it, is your hormones settling. Yeah, so I'd be like, so I was like, my hormones are just coming out through my eyes, because, like, I literally had to tell myself everything under the sun. And something that I learned with my second is that there's postpartum anxiety and depression, but there's also postpartum OCD. And those are the intrusive thoughts and the things that you start doing and thinking that you're like, this is like, why am I thinking this? So with my second, I went through an episode of postpartum OCD that was really scary. And that's where I started to tell my husband, like, I cannot go through this again. I cannot go through this again. And the other day I told this story. This is really silly. But one of the things that finally convinced me to have the third, that I was like, and the thing is, me and my husband always wanted big families. And we always say, he's Dominican. And we always say, like, if we're in Campo in Santo Domingo, like, I would have 10, because, like, I love being pregnant. I love having kids. It's just in this day and age, it's very hard.
It's very hard.
We always knew I've known him forever, and we always knew that we wanted a lot of kids. But the decision to finally, like, okay, we're going to try for the third, was I went on a girls trip to New York with my friends, and we were eating dinner, and across from where we were eating there was like a psychic, and it was like psychic $5. And we're like, let's go do it. Let's go do it. Like, let's go, or $20 for 5
Just
minutes.
for fun. Just for fun.
We're like, let's go do it and see what she says. And it's crazy how like the things that she was telling us like really matched all of us. And it was very like, and I'm the only mom in the group. And she told me, you have 2 kids. And later on, I was like, I was wearing a necklace with 2 letters. So I was like, she saw that and knew that it was like 2 initials. But she was like, you have 2 kids, and within the next year, you're going to have a third. And before she could finish her sentence, she said, and it's going to be a good thing. And like the way she looked at me and told me like, and it's going to be a good thing, I like burst into tears in this lady's little like seance that she had created like in Greenwich Village. And I was like, so I just kept telling myself the whole pregnancy and even like that first month postpartum, I was like, that psychic in New York said it's going to be
okay. I'm going to be okay.
So that was just like,
I can let her know.
Yes, we always talk about that. I mean, she said other things that did not happen or were not going to happen. Like the other girls that I went with, 2 of them never, like they never want kids. And she told one of them she was going to have twins. And my friend was like, no. So it's not to say that like she was right. It was just hearing her say that is just like a little thing that I've carried with me. Like that bruja said that I was going to be okay.
I did it. I made it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. First of all, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being open about your story, because I am 100% sure there's going to be so many people that are going to listen to this, are going to be able to relate.
I hope so.
Well, yeah. So thank you so much for being so open about your mental health, because that is so important.
Especially postpartum mental health. It's a topic as women we should talk more about, and I feel we're silent. Like we don't want to judge, or we don't want to make someone feel that maybe I didn't go through it or I don't know how it feels, but we all go through it differently. Because hearing you speak, I'm like, wait, I went through it.
Yeah.
Maybe not as intense, but then I feel that, okay, I'm not alone. I was not going crazy then.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
Maybe
definitely,
not.
it's your hormones.
Yeah, maybe not the same thing. For example, for me, my second one, I wanted a girl. I didn't find out the sex until the day I gave birth to him. I gave birth to him. It was a boy. And I was so disappointed that it was a boy, but I kept it internally because I was like, I can't express that. Like I have a healthy baby.
Yeah.
It was a long journey. I did IVF. I had a lot of infertility issues. So when I finally held him and it was a boy, I remember that feeling of like, oh my God, it's not a girl. But then immediately I shut down and I was like, I can't say this and I can't share it with anyone.
Yeah, gender disappointment is a thing.
Oh, yeah. And it's not spoken because, again, like my feeling was like, I don't dare say anything because I have a beautiful, healthy baby boy. How dare I say, oh, I wanted a girl, right?
Yeah, and then they're going to say, oh, you don't love him or whatever.
You're grateful.
That's the case, but it's just how, that's why with my third, I didn't do gender reveal. I didn't do anything because I really wanted a boy. And I'd seen here and there, I've seen it maybe like 2-3 times, gender disappointment videos of like moms who find out the gender and it's not what they wanted. And they get really upset. Obviously, down the road, you end up loving your baby more than anything.
Yeah.
But I was very like, I know I'm going to be disappointed if it's another girl. I really want a boy. And that, even if you want to talk about taboo things, that was a very Latino machismo thing. Because it was very like, my suegro doesn't have anybody to carry the last name. Mind you, our last name is Williams. I was like, that last name's not going anywhere. So it was like the pressure from my suegro, like, you need to have a boy. My suegra was dying for a boy, and my husband too, because my husband's very like, I'm outnumbered in the house. Like, there isn't. So like, it was like a pressure. And like, honestly, I would have loved to have 3 girls. I'm a very girly girl. Like, I love girls. But it was like that feeling of like, if I find out it's a girl, like, how am I going to take it? It's going to be really hard. So I can't even imagine that feeling of in the hospital when everybody's around you, everybody's rushing.
Yeah.
You know, you're carrying your baby. Like, that's a really strong thing for you to admit. And I'm sure at the moment you were like, I can never tell anybody I think this. And now you're saying it.
Yeah, 100%.
On a podcast.
I shared it with my husband probably like 6-7 months. And he kind of knew. He was like, I kind of knew, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to make you feel bad. And of course, I never told his family or my family because I didn't want, like, the judgment. But I remember when I got home from the hospital, my grandmother and mom, my family came over to visit. And the first thing my grandmother told me was, I thought it was a girl. Like, what happened? And I felt so ashamed and like, I felt like stupid. Like, oh my God, yeah, she's right. Because I would say like, oh, I want a girl. I hope it's a girl. That's all I spoke about like the whole 9 months. And I was like, for sure, like, it's a girl. And then my grandmother, it was like a slap in the face when she said that. I was like, I don't even think I replied to her. I'm pretty sure I didn't.
But it's about hurts. And those are like the taboo, Betty, that you were just saying and that we talk about all the time. It hurts because no matter what, like.
And this is somebody you love
Exactly.
telling you that.
And that we still love our baby. We're not taking away that we don't want our baby to not have been born. We're just saying, well, we wanted a girl and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, we still love them. And I think that goes a lot con nuestra cultura. Like that we have to be a certain way, that we have to think a certain way. And that really continues to go from generation to generation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So now I know that as much as we share a little of, how we feel, especially postpartum and going through pregnancy, Betty, a las mujeres que sienten culpa de pedir ayuda o tomarse tiempo para ellas mismas, especially after postpartum, right? Like, or going through postpartum, like, when do you know you need a break or like you needed help? Like, how do you took that step without thinking what anybody else would say or judge?
That's a really good question because I still haven't figured that out. Like, I'm still very, like I told you guys before we started recording, like, my family's sick. I'm starting to feel sick, but I'm still up and cleaning and stuff. I'm not resting and I should be. And it's, like you said, it's passed on generation through generation and I still haven't learned it. But I definitely, with my third, got a lot more vocal with my husband, telling him what I needed. And this was something that I worked on in therapy leading up to the pregnancy because that was something I was scared of, that everything was going to fall on me for some reason.
Yeah.
And it's also that idea of like, we're home all day, we should be able to do it.
Yeah.
And people do not realize what it is to take care of a newborn all day long.
It's a full-time job. It's like 3 jobs in one.
Yeah, like just because you're home with the newborn doesn't mean you can also do laundry and also cook and also clean. You can't.
And then they expect you to rest too. Ay, pero ¿por qué tú no duermes cuando él duerme?
Yeah. And it's like, well, I have to clean the bottles and then it's like,
so that's true. I agree with you.
Yeah, with my mother-in-law. So this was my third C-section. So I had a lot of scar tissue. So on top of my scar, I have, and I'm a very like naturally like thin person. So my skin is like still loose and stuff, but I bounced back in the sense of like, like my stomach deflated like timely, but I still have like scar tissue above my scar. So like above my scar, it's like really puffy and swollen. And I was like, I'm not even going to say it in Spanish just in case she hears me from outside the door.
No worries.
But I was kind of like, oh my God, look, like, I lost weight pretty quickly because it's just like the way I've always been. But look at this, how this still stayed like this. And she was like, that's because you're not resting. That's because you're not wearing the faja. That's because you're not wearing it. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. It's because I'm not wearing the faja. It's because I'm not resting. It's because the way that I carry the baby. And it's just like, why are you blaming me for having scar tissue?
Yeah.
Because I had 3 C-sections, even the doctor, because with this third one, I did burn my fallopian tubes. And she said that that's a procedure that usually happens outside of the body. Like they literally take your uterus and fallopian tubes out, they burn it, and then they put it back in. But she wasn't able to take it out because I had so much scar tissue. So my procedure took longer than normal because she had to go inside. So I was like, no, even my doctor told me that I had a lot, like, it's not my fault.
It's normal. We have to go through this.
And then you start questioning yourself, right? Like right now, you're like, wait a minute, no. Like you start questioning yourself. Like you don't need to come up with an excuse.
Right. And I'm like, the faja does not take this away. You literally need to do scar tissue mobilization, which you can't even do until 6 months after. So there's nothing I could do about this until I'm at least 6 months postpartum. And trust me, every time I look at myself in the mirror right before I'm in a shower, I hate it. And I used to love my C-section scar. Like whenever people are like, oh, this cream that takes away your C-section scar, I'm like, I love my scar. Like, don't touch it. I love to see it. When I see myself and I see my scar, I'm like, I did that. But that little puffiness, I hate it. So to have somebody telling me like, oh, it's your fault that you have that, I'm like, no, it's not.
Going back to our taboos.
Yeah.
Yo me acuerdo que every time the 2 times I went to the hospital, coge, ponte la faja, tú traiste la faja. I just gave birth.
Yeah, and that just like plays into your body dysmorphia. And then at the end of the day, like subconsciously, like we were raised to listen to our elders, that they're right. So even if we know that it's not the point, like we still question ourselves.
Yeah, of course.
Like what you just said, Jeanette, like I still got very like, will the file take away my scar tissue? Even though I had a pelvic floor therapist tell me no, like you need cupping for that and it hurts a lot.
Yeah.
Like in order for that to go away. So yeah, it's that element is always going to be there, that when we do listen to them, like, oh, I thought it was a girl. Like when we do listen to our elders or whatever, I think it hits harder because of the way that we were raised to always listen to them.
100.
Like a filtering system, like you can't tell her that.
Good one.
Yeah, because it's so hard to battle the other people. My suegra tells me a lot, they hate the way we do things. And it's like, the support, the answer to that is like, you remember back in the day when women would spend like 40 days in the dark room?
Yes.
That you wouldn't leave?
Yep, and they had a village that would come over, cook.
Right, it's like handpicking your village. Like, my suegra lives with us, so how am I supposed to tell her, like, yeah, the house for 40 days? I would say honestly, like the best recursos is like, I think we take for granted how much people want to help us.
Yeah.
Like people who love us. So I think like identifying who that person's gonna be. I am very, 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 there isn't enough berries to tell you how blessed I am that my older sister, who's 10 years older than me, and she's like my mom. She's like my like best friend, my rock, my mom. She's an OBGYN. She lives in Rhode Island, so she never did my surgeries. But I'm telling you, every time I sneezed, every time I cried, every time I went to the bathroom, I would tell her. And having her was like something that helped me so much. So I think that having that one person that you could rely on, and a few people, because sometimes it is a lot to carry somebody else's burden. And sometimes I would be like, I'm texting my sister. And I even like knew her work schedule. Like on Tuesday nights, she would do overnights at the hospital. So if I would wake up at 3 a.m. like crying or whatever, I knew I could text her.
Because she'll be like,
She's working. And she'd be, even if she took like a little while to respond, she'd be like, hey, sorry, I just finished a C-section. And I'd be like,
no worries.
And I'm like, I'm just sobbing in my diapers. So I think having a few like talk to people and reach out to people. Like we live in a day and age where we don't have to rely on the Pony Express. Like we're not alone. We just have to know how to find our tribe, our village of people who are going to not judge us, like be supportive. And if you don't, like, I'm very lucky I had my sister. I'm very lucky I have really good friends. But sometimes, like, if you don't have that strong person that you feel comfortable with, like, maybe there's a Facebook group, or maybe there's just like, there's gonna be a support. We might have to work a little bit harder to find it, but it's gonna be there. Like that person or those people that we can.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think community, especially now as las mujeres, Latinas, overall, you know, as women, we're trying to build it, create it, or we're trying to be a part of it, right?
Yeah.
Because we know how much is needed. Like, yes, like you mentioned on Facebook, there's so much with postpartum for first-time moms, second-time moms, for divorce, marriage, right? That they can help in any aspect, that you don't feel alone. Because sometimes, like you said, you can have the support, and other times you might not have any support. So then what do you do then, right? And I think it's important to know and recognize that there is help out there. You just need to know what you're looking for and go out. And
Yeah, and like my psychiatrist told me, with, you know, how I contacted her like right away with the third. If you have everything in place, it'll make it a lot easier. Like our hormones are gonna be there. I don't know if you've read the statistics about like postpartum, like those days after birth, it's like coming off of like 30 birth control pills at the same, like something about like if you were to take 30 birth control pills a day for a year and then had to wean off of them, that's like what your hormones are doing. So like based on anatomy, like our crying, that's why I would say like my hormones are just leaving through my eyes.
Yeah.
So like based on anatomy, like we're supposed, like it's okay that our body is feeling that way. So we need to get ready. Like the more ready we can be, the better it's gonna be for us. So identifying that person, identifying what supplements or medications you might want to take. Like all of that is essential. It's so essential.
Yeah, I have a few friends that they would ask me, this is my first baby. What stroller do you suggest, or what this you suggest? And I'm like, I don't
Doesn't
suggest,
matter.
nah, it doesn't matter. I suggest for you to build a community, get a doula, do your research on like after that
Yeah.
postpartum period. That's important. You could have like the most expensive stroller,
Yeah.
carry on.
Yes.
Like none of that matters. What matters is these essential things in that postpartum
Yeah.
period. Like get yourself that community that you're going to need because
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
need it.
Absolutely. Like I think hopefully we move towards a space where like baby showers are more about that, like helping you fund like all that postpartum support. Because like you said, like something that helped me so much was having that pelvic floor therapist come, especially with my third C-section. And just like I did not realize how important it was to have her. And that was much more important than the blankets that I spent weeks like, do I want the ones with the little elephants?
Yeah. Decorating the room, which is beautiful. It's part
All of that is still fun.
but it's not as important.
That's
Yeah.
one of the funnest parts, like nesting. Like it's crazy how as women the word nesting comes from birds building a nest. And it's so funny how like birds know how to do it and we do it too. Like how important it is for us. Like, and we want to clean everything and do it. Like that is such a fun part, but we cannot forget to have those systems in place for the ugly times. Like all that is the cute stuff, but let's also get ready for the stuff that's not going to be cute.
That is true. Raw and real conversations that we need to all hear today. Y
Yeah.
ahora, cambiemos un poco el tema, porque hoy en día más latinas están tomando el control de su futuro y creando su propio negocio. Porque por muchos años nos decían que lo seguro era you have to study, you have to find a job, and then retire. Pero más y más mujeres están rompiendo con esas expectativas y diciendo, yo quiero crear algo mío como lo has hecho tú y lo estamos tratando de hacer nosotras.
Yes. So Betty, you're an entrepreneur. You've written books, created educational content, and now you have your own YouTube channel. When did you realize that you wanted to build your own business and break away from the traditional, path of what we're supposed to do versus what truly fulfills you?
Okay. So excellent question. And, you asked like, when did I realize? When I started college, I didn't know if I wanted to do education or broadcast journalism because I always wanted to be on TV. And like my dream job was always to be on like Sesame Street, like to do something educational. And it still is. I'm constantly looking at like positions in Sesame Street. And I tell my husband because they're all in New York. And I'm like, one day we're going to have to move to New York. So
Never say never.
Yeah.
Rooting for you.
Thank you. So I went the education route and I was doing the teaching thing. And then one day I was at my sister's house and she lived in Tampa and she would use this babysitting service for her kids. And she was like, Betty, you could do something like this. And I was like, me? And it was like that idea of like, we were never told like you can run a business. That was like the first time that I was ever told like you can do something like this. And I know there's like a video of Cardi B that went around that she tells people like if you go to college, no matter what you study, make sure you take a business class. I wish I would have heard that when I was in college because that came out after I left college. Had I been told like you can start your own businesses and you can run it if you have the desire and the will, like I 100% would have taken the entrepreneurial path from the beginning.
Yeah.
But nobody in my family had ever owned any businesses. Well, my grandfather did in Cuba before communism. And then once the communism happened, he went one day to like open his business and it was taken away from him. So like one of my generational traumas, like one of the things that's like in me is always like that fear of like, it could all be taken away from me one day. Of course. And I always heard the stories about my grandfather's store that he owned. But besides that, like nobody in my community, nobody around me, nobody close to me had ever owned a business or started anything like that. And when my sister told me that, I started to look into it. And that's when I really started to learn about like entrepreneurship and that like literally anybody could do it. Like not like that it's easy because it's not. But that if that's something you want to do, that is something you can do, that you can learn how to do, that you can dip your toes into. So I, again, still didn't have supports. Like my parents don't know about that. So like I never had that support. But luckily this journey started when I started dating my husband again. Like I said, this is like a whole novela. We've known each other like since high school, but we started dating again, like even after I had my first daughter. And that man is like my number one cheerleader. So he was always very like, yeah, you could do it. Yeah, like let's find out. Like what do you need? And through a lot of trials and tribulations, I started to like for me, it's always been, I want to educate kids and I want to help moms and teachers.
Yeah.
So just learning about entrepreneurship and that like I can break the mold. I can be a source of inspiration for other women like me. I can create my own income. I could do something outside of teaching that is going to give me more money because I love teaching. I love what I do. I love my students, but it's not sustainable long term unless I marry like the richest, like it's hard. So when I started learning that, I was like, I want to do that. And then little by little, I just like started learning what I do like, what I don't like. And I've tutored hundreds of kids. And whenever I tutor the kids, I'd be like, man, I wish there was a book for this and this and this and that. Or like when I was a Spanish teacher, I was like, I wish there was a book that was like, that looked like this and that we could do this. And then that's when I was like, let me start writing my own books. And I'm very like something that me and my dad did not have a good relationship. But one thing I always say, and one of my books that's dedicated to him says like, to papi, thank you for teaching me how to fight, like how to be una luchadora. And not in a positive way. Like he taught me to because like I had to fight for myself because I didn't have him to lean on. So like one thing that he gave me, that my family gave me, is like, I have to figure it out in this world. So like once I got an idea in my mind, I was like, I'm going to figure this out. If I don't like it, I won't go through with it. But if I like it, I'm going to keep going. And then when I started to write my books, I was like, I love this. I love this. I love this. And I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to fake it till I make it. But I love writing my books. And then, like I said, I've always wanted to be on Sesame Street. So the idea of a YouTube channel was always really scary because I don't know anything about like the tech side of it, like editing, any of that. So I waited and waited and I would stall and stall. Like huge mistake for anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur. Like urgency is your best friend.
Yes.
Do it and figure it out.
Yeah, so
once I started figuring out like, oh, I can edit videos on Canva. Like I just started to find the way because it's just me. Like there's no other like yeah, my husband supports me.
But at the end, it's your business, your dream, your aspirations. And I love Betty because what happens is that we always feel that the people who are entrepreneurs or millionaires or make it overall, right? They come from wealthy families or from families that have been able to guide them and help them. And for Hispanics and Latinos, I feel like that's something we struggle, right? Because same with us, we don't have parents that grew up as entrepreneurs. It's with that mindset of you find a job or find a good career, you get a retirement and you live paycheck to paycheck and you survive, right? But then there's something within us that we want so much more. Because it's true, we can't make a living with what we're making right now, no matter in what career you're in.
Yeah.
Right? It's really hard. Either you have to be a slave 24/7 and you still don't have enough to go on vacation or to live your best life, as they say. So I think that one of the biggest challenges is that, and you were clear about it, how overcoming it was tough, but then you have to get started.
Yeah, you have to get started. And that's something that was really hard for me to like get over, and it still bothers me a lot because there's a lot of people that I look up to and I'm like, I wish I could do it like her. I wish I could be like her. Like, why does she get it so easily? Like, how does she make it? And then when you learn their background, you're like, oh, like there's a creator that I'm like obsessed with, and I'm like, how does she get so many opportunities? How does she like? And then when I found out her uncle is a very famous Spanish singer, I was like, well, that's, like,
it's a different 100%.
Not to take away her like work, not to take away the fact that she also had to work hard, but like some people's like those like images of like sometimes like your ladder has like shorter steps than the next person.
Of course.
So like even if you're having to take like bigger steps, like take them. Some people can run up the ladder. Some people you need a little bit of help. That's the best way to put it. Like I don't want to take away any woman's like merits or anything, but just, I say this because sometimes you see other people and you're like, I wish I could be in their shoes. Like, I'm doing everything. I'm doing all the steps. But like, just remember, sometimes people had different opportunities. Like there's and again, not to take away from like what she's doing, but like, I'm obsessed with Miss Rachel and I'm very like, I want to be just like that.
You remind me of her in a way. Yeah, of like how you are. When I see your TikToks and stuff, I'm like, you remind me of her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So like one of my dreams is to like be like that. But then I found out like her husband is a Broadway composer. So like she has a husband that knows how to do the music and the piano and like the editing and like this. So like, not that I can't be there as well, but like her ladder was shorter in that sense of like,
100%. I get it. And I'm glad that you mentioned, I don't mean to cut you off, is that social media right now, I feel like it's getting worse to the point that we criticize, not in a negative way, but we compare ourselves.
Yeah.
Or we feel like, oh, I'm too far behind. There's no way. Like, we already have a Miss Rachel. How is Betty going to come in now and be the next Miss Rachel, right? But it's not that idea that you can be, is that now your process is going to take a little bit longer and it might look different because it will look different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it will look different.
there's two ways that I battle this, and I hope that like somebody listening, it helps. So like two things that I tell myself is, the first is, and in a non-judgmental way. So like I look at other people who are doing something different, and it's like you look at like a hairstylist, right? Like she doesn't want to do what I want to do, and I don't want to do what she is doing. So like I don't want to open a beauty salon. So what does that mean? That means that I was given this wish, this thing in my heart to do for a reason. Like I look at somebody who's a mechanic and it's like, I don't want to do that. That guy's not going to come for my job because he doesn't want to do what I'm doing and I don't want to do what he's doing. So that's something that helps me a lot. Like when I see people like, and it's like this active thing that I've done in my mind. Like when I see people doing things, I'm like, you can still go after your dreams, because even when it feels like somebody's already doing that, there's a million people who aren't. So if you focus on the people who aren't doing what you want to do, like it's like this mental thing where you're just like
It's true.
You see a chef, like if I see a chef, I'm like, oh, she's not trying to be the next Miss Rachel in Spanish. I am.
Okay.
So if you think about it that way, and then the second thing that I tell myself a lot is like, when you see like a Walgreens in front of a CVS, they're like, okay, if they're doing it, so can I. Or when you
gas stations too.
When you see two gas stations one next to each other, or you see a mall. A mall is literally stores of clothes one next to each other, and they're not worried about what the person next to, I mean, they might be a little bit, but they're still doing their thing. Or like even farmers market, you go to a farmers market and like how many people are not selling fruits, but like they don't care. They're like, this is my fruit stand and I'm going to sell it and I'm going to sell you the best fruit. So like, that's how you have to think about it. So those are my two ways of like, not everybody wants what I want. And so like, I have to go after what I want, and competition's okay because we cannot serve everybody.
Oof.
Yeah.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. And I was going to say, everyone is very unique. Me and you can both have a podcast, but mine is going to be unique in its own way. And I'm going to be serving a group of people.
Right.
Podcast is going to be unique in your way and serving another group of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely. That's why the different stores in the mall exist.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody wants to go to Dick's Sporting Goods,
Right.
but like, thank God that they weren't like, well, I'm not going to open a store because Forever 21 exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Sears and JCPenney. To me, they're the same, but they're not.
Yeah.
Right? Because
TJ Maxx and Home Goods.
Yes.
So, but it's true. You still go to Sears or you will go to JCPenney for a specific item that you couldn't find elsewhere because of special discount that maybe the other store didn't give you. Like it was always those little things that will stand you out no matter what.
Yeah, and as long as like you keep on, like people are always gonna know what to find you for. Thank you. So luckily for the most part, like my friends, most of them, and if they didn't, they're not my friend anymore, support me. And they know how I am. And they're like, you go, Betty. And like I just did like a merch line. And I even had my two friends that don't drink coffee that they're like, send us the link. We want to buy the shirt. And I'm like, no, you don't even drink coffee. I'm not even going to. No, don't worry about it. So luckily for me, I've always had people very like, do it. You go for it. But when I've had from family members, the hack, the trick with Latino family members is just give them the benefits. Like just tell them like paint the beautiful picture so that they understand. Like, let me think of an example. So with my content creation, like if I'm invited to an event, you know, so that I can make content, like instead of focusing on like, oh, I have to go to this event because I'm trying to be a vlogger or whatever, it's like, look at what they gave me. They gave me free tickets to this. So if you just like paint it like that, but I understand. Another thing, I guess, is like, don't say too much. The whole like, sabache thing.
Yeah.
Like, try not to say too much. Just like with postpartum, like find the people that will support you and that will be there for you and that will support that camino. I don't have too much like really good advice for this because like I said, like luckily I've never had anybody like bring me down.
Which that's a blessing, of course. There's nothing
Yeah.
like that's great. And I'm sure like there's been so many others that are like, I have a great family support, friend support, right? And those that don't, it's basically going back to finding the community, right? And like you said, the ones that are your friends, great. And those who are not today, then for a reason they're not your friends,
Yeah,
right?
like, only let people show you their colors once.
Yes.
Like even if it's family, like set that boundary early.
Yeah, no, I love it.
And then lastly, before we go on to our next segment, before we close, ¿qué consejo le daría, Betty, con tu experiencia, a alguien que esté pensando en estos momentos de hacer el primer paso to start the entrepreneurship or start that book or start posting on Instagram for the first time? Like, what advice would you give them to just go for it right now?
Just don't be, this is like hard, like easier said than done, but like don't be scared to fail. Don't be scared of what other people are going to say. Don't be scared because it's part of it. Like even those picture perfect stories that you see, they don't exist. Most people who have had overnight success is like a sex tape or something scandalous. So unless you're willing to do that, like it's going to take work and that's okay. And it's like that whole idea of if you see something and you think like, it's going to take me 5 years before this is like really where I want it to be. Okay, so in 5 years, do you want to be there? Or in 5 years, do you still want to be thinking like, well, should I start it?
Yeah.
So just go, just do it. There's one life.
I love that. Yeah. And not just to think the long term, because if we think I feel on, like you said, on the 5 years, then we're like, oh, de aquí a 5 años, like graduating. I won't graduate from here to 8 years.
Yeah.
Maybe like those baby steps of like just it's really helpful. And I agree because the perfection, it's not going to happen no matter now or in 10 years. We're never going to be perfect. There's never going to be a perfect time. So I think it's where we are right now and continue to remember that we only have one life, right?
Yeah.
To live it day by day because you never know what can happen tomorrow. So that's a beautiful reminder. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Beautiful. Betty, thank you so much for this conversation. This conversation was so real and so necessary. I am so glad that we had this conversation. I would love to give you the opportunity to shout out all your socials, any new projects that you have coming up. And of course, we're going to see you in Sesame Place because I'm betting for.
I'm going to be on the lookout now.
Thank you.
Go for it. So if you would love to let our listeners know where they can find you. And yeah, your YouTube channel, you can just shout it out. I do include it in the show notes, but go ahead, shout it out.
Yeah, thank you. So my Instagram and TikTok is Betty Pastelitos. And my educational stuff is all under the umbrella of Briando. So my YouTube channel is Briando Kids. And where my workbooks are starting to be posted is briando.co. So all my educational workbooks, I'm starting the process now of moving them from Amazon to my own website. Nice. But it's Briando.
And Betty, I have a question. Why Betty Pastelito? Do you love pastelito or dale con? And I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask because I love pastelito, so I wanted to know where it comes from.
Yeah, so that I do love pastelitos, but that name came from, I have a really long maiden name. And like I said, I don't really get along with my dad. So I always had this thing of like, you know how people are like, I'm never changing my last name. Like my dad helped me pay for my college or what. Like I did not have that experience. Like I wanted to get rid of my last name as quickly as possible. And when I started college, I went to FSU for 2 years and we had to make up like a username for a forum. And I wanted it to be like, I didn't want to use anything of my last name. And I wanted it to be something that represented that I was from Miami. So
Love that.
I wrote like Betty and I was like, I want to use my last name. And I was like, what can show? And I don't know how I thought of Betty Pastelitos. And that just,
I love it. It's so unique.
thank
That really, I think that's one of the things that attract me to your page. Because of course you're thinking like, oh, she has cute, like Hispanic roots. And then I'm like, pastelito, like there's something here that I need to look at.
Yeah, thank you.
It's very unique. Thank you for sharing that. I was just curious because I know that,
Thank you.
you know, your usernames are different. Sometimes we just do random ones, but I knew it has somewhat of a meaning.
It does.
Pero antes de cerrar, you know, we can't finish an episode sin hablar de la tía chismosa because let's be real, todos tenemos una.
Yes.
Yeah, that one tía que siempre tiene algo que decir, whether it's about tu vida, tu carrera, o hasta cómo tú estás criando tus hijos.
So, Betty, what's the last thing your tía chismosa told you?
Actually, the chisme lately has been with celebrities, but what? Yeah, what has? Oh, I'm always, and I was told that my house is la casa de las niñas descalza because every time they come, me and my daughters are always descalza. And
That's us right now.
I'm always like, I will show you my feet right now.
Y
But
que por
that's
eso
weird.
andamos enfermas, right? Que por eso nos enfermamos. Por
Which-
los pies, el frío.
And that's not true. But yeah, I was told like, and I'm like, and my son's gonna probably be barefoot too. Yeah.
I love that. I haven't heard that in a while. It's so true.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cute. I love it. Well,
Thank
before
you.
we wrap up, we want to invite you all to join us for La Jarrito Taboo Life on Instagram. It's a fun, unfiltered space where we dive into rapid-fire taboo questions, share laughs, and keep it real, sin filtro y sin pena.
Yeah, so don't miss it and make sure you follow us for more conversation like these. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and of course, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Betty. This was
Thank you.
amazing. On to our next episode.
Thank you. Bye.